He was ready to step aside, but he didn't have faith in any of his lieutenants other than the late Prime Minister Amadou Gon Coulibaly, whom he had chosen really very much, very personal choice as his successor, as the person that he trusted to carry on the work that he's been doing for the last 9 years. And that very, very strong self-belief in what he has been doing during this current presidential term and the one that preceded it, which after all was in the aftermath of a civil conflict with the country's economy really not quite in ruins, but deeply paralyzed. He believes he's done a huge reconstruction job and that only Mr. Gon Coulibaly could have carried that forward. So the sudden death of Mr. Gon Coulibaly, Prime Minister, early in July, left him confronted with this decision. Others, of course, can see the situation quite differently, but from Ouattara's personal political perspective, he believed there was no other choice.
Now, let's talk about his chances of re-election. What is the current state of the opposition? Does he face any kind of competition?
Yes, Ivory Coast has a French-style two-round presidential election system. So there are currently four known significant candidates in the race. There's Henri Konan-Bédier, who's 86 years old, who's a former president. And then there are three other politicians of a younger generation who are in the contest. But the key thing is what happens at the end of that first round. And if the opposition managed to deny Ouattara an outright victory with 50% of the vote on the first ballot, then they can unite around a single candidate for the runoff. And then the race could be much tougher for him, especially if Mr. Konan-Bédier, despite his age, presents himself, if you like, as a sort of overseeing, almost monarchical kind of constitutional presidential candidate, if you like, with a strong message that actually it'll be the younger generation who'll be handling day-to-day government. And the opposition have been trying to build an alliance that will enable them to offer that strong second-round alternative.
Now, Ouattara's decision has been deemed illegal by his opponents. Could this lead to another civil war?
It's probably less likely to be an outright civil war of the kind that we've seen in Ivory Coast in the early 2000s and again in 2010, 2011, because before becoming Prime Minister, Mr. Bakayoko was first Interior Minister and then Defense Minister. And in those roles, he's established a very strong government control over the security forces. However, what we could see is really serious unrest, particularly in Abidjan. The mood among many Ivorians has been worried and pessimistic for more than a year now. People have been really quite scared about the approach of this election, and there are a lot of very, very angry people, particularly among young opposition supporters in parts of Abidjan. We could see really quite serious unrest. So even if we don't get a conventional war, the situation could get very dangerous, and the risk of loss of life is really quite genuine.